Yes.
Good evening. This is a call to order of the Wilmette I believe I'm on.
Bring it forward a little bit.
Oh, bring it forward?
Sorry.
Sure. Happy to do that. Is that better? Okay. Good evening. Try again. This is a call to order of the Wilmette Public Library District Board of Trustees regular meeting for Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. The time is now 6:30, and the meeting will begin. Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Here.
Trustee DiLorenzo here. Trustee Nealon?
Here.
Trustee O'Keefe?
Here.
Trustee Senate?
Here.
Trustee Summer?
Here.
Trustee Fishman?
Here. Thank you. Our first order of business is to review and approval of the draft minutes of the April 16th, 2024 regular board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move approval of the April 16th, 2024 regular board meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you.
second.
All right. And is there any discussion? All right. And may we have a trustee DiLorenzo, a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee Nealon?
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe?
Yes.
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Summer?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes, thank you. The motion carried. Meeting attendees who have signed the visitor or public comment registration form and wish to address the board may do so here. Do we have anyone who would like to present for the board? All right, we'll move on. There are no presentations this evening. And now it's time for the treasurer's report. Treasurer Summer, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Replacement taxes in May will be $19,752. I actually looked it up. And which will be a total of $113,987, which will result in this line item being about 12% below budget at year end. Nothing we have control over. The tax is a tax primarily paid by corporations, S-corps, partnerships, and trusts that earn income in Illinois. It's a tax collected in addition to the corporate income tax, in case anybody wanted to know. There was no special reserve expenditures in April. In early May, the library reinvested 3 CDs to capture 5% rates and extended them to capitalize on the good rates. There are 2 more coming up shortly, and they plan to do the same with both of those. A couple of checks. There was a check to Arthur J. Gallagher in the amount of $45.27. But if you would notice on the all classes income statement, the total for the account is $55.43. The difference between the 2 numbers has to do with payroll. And so they're journal entries, they're not actually checks written. So it comes out of the liability fund. There was, on page 2, there's a check to ComputerView for $56.90 for the annual renewal of our enterprise antivirus software Trend Micro. There was a check to Neil Hansen for building improvement in the amount of $7,555. That was for deep cleaning of carpets and selected upholstered furniture, which we do twice a year. They were formerly Bright Side. And lastly, on page 10, there's a check to Sickett for $9,000 under non-librarian salaries. Just to make sure everybody's clear, with the longer than expected vacant finance manager position, we didn't budget enough on the professional accounting services. So we've been treating accounting consulting as a contracted employee, just debiting those funds from the same line as if they were an employee. Does anybody have any questions on any other line items, checks, anything?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the checks, bills, and salaries?
I move approval of the bills and salaries check detail for March 2024 as presented.
And is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any further discussion? No, seeing none. Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee Nealon?
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe?
Yes.
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Summer? Summer?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes. Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Trustee Treasurer Summer. Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to our action items. And thank you. Our first action item is ordinance number 2023/24-211, the ordinance setting schedule for regular meetings of the board. Dr. Austin, any comments?
No, you'll just see on the cover sheet for the ordinance that by procedure we go through and review how our meeting might correspond with some of the holidays, and we did double check that, and our meeting does not coincide with any of these major holidays, so we should be good to meet on our regular schedule of every third Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. right here in the auditorium.
Appreciate you that you checked with District 39 and any other holidays on the calendar. Great. Great. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-24-211, ordinance setting schedule for regular meetings of the board?
I move approval of the ordinance number 2023-24-11, ordinance setting schedule for regular meetings of the board as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Yes?
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee Nealon?
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe?
Yes.
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Summer?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes. Thank you. Motion carried. Our second action item is the annual decision to participate in the Public Library Non-Resident Services Program. And Director Austin, I'll turn to you also for that.
Okay.
Some explanation, please.
This is more of a procedural action that we take on an annual basis. Were there any non-residents in our service area who wish to get a library card, we need to establish a means by which they would be able to participate in our services. And traditionally, for the last, well, at least 20 some odd years, we've been following the tax bill method as a matter of this procedure on an annual basis. That's the most equitable and consistent way to do this. It's the same method that we as residents use to determine what our relative taxes to the library will be for the services rendered. So I recommend that we continue on with this method. As I reported in the cover sheet, there are currently no instances of these non-resident fee cards, and to our recollection, we haven't had any because the borders of Wilmette Public Library District are the same contiguous borders as that of the Village of Wilmette. Any
Thank you.
questions?
So we've never had anyone apply?
Not to
or-
my knowledge.
Okay. And wasn't there as I thought I recalled, if someone works in Wilmette, is there say they work in Wilmette, but they don't live in Wilmette? Is it the same, this is the same application?
Different. So
Okay.
but wherever your home residence is, wherever you pay property taxes, whether through your rent or through your property taxes for your home, that is where you should get your library card. And then through the state of Illinois, you are granted reciprocal privileges at any public library in the state.
So if a teacher who teaches in Wilmette wanted to come and use the library?
We have a separate policy in our
That's
policy
what I-
manual for library cards and
getting at.
accounts that establish how we handle those relationships. Yeah.
Okay,
Just-
thank you.
For families that have kids in District 39 but may not live in Wilmette, is that part of that policy too? Are there circumstances where those, like I'm thinking West Glenview, Avoca?
Avoca, not 39, yes. They would get their library cards through wherever their home residence is, so it would be Glenview or Winnetka Northfield. And there are unserved portions of Winnetka Northfield, and those would be the individuals who would be eligible for a non-resident fee card, but that would be in Winnetka because that's their home address. Yeah, Avoca is kind of funny because they're on the border like that, but they serve 4 communities. Northfield.
Good question, though.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Is there a motion to approve the annual decision to participate in the public library non-resident services program?
I move approval of the annual decision to participate in the Public Library Non-Resident Services Program and via the tax bill method as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Thank you. Then Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee Nealon?
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe?
Yes.
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Summer?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes, thank you. Motion carried. All right, on to our discussion items then. And first on the list is our update on our strategic facility plan space needs assessment. Director Austin.
Okay.
Thank you.
So staff engagement around our space needs assessment, also known as the Strategic Facility Plan, kicked off at Staff Development Day on Friday, April 19th, where nearly 80 employees participated in a discussion of our project from a presentation with our architect, Joe Huberty. Earlier that week, the core team, including multiple managers with trustees Fishman and O'Keefe, met with our architect and his partner, Sean Kelly, on April 16th to officially kick off our project, and met again recently on May 9th. In between these meetings, trustees comprehensively toured the library building to see challenges firsthand and to learn about some of the opportunities that we've been exploring. Meanwhile, staff has been discussing the project among themselves and sharing feedback with administration in response to key question prompts built around the concepts of what aspects of the building and operation need to be preserved or retained, what spaces or services need to be reevaluated or discarded, and what spaces, services, collections, or other aspects should be created as part of this project. So basically the keep, toss, create concept. Staff are also exploring their priorities for meeting the current and emerging needs of our community, informed both by their firsthand experience in direct public service and/or awareness of emerging trends and the anticipated impacts of innovations that are driving our industry and culture. This latter subject of community engagement will soon be coordinated and launched with our consultant and presented with the context of possibilities from the ideation of trustees and staff. Meanwhile, our contractor team is gathering data ranging from our anticipated space needs for collections and operations to our anticipated project materials, including furnishings, shelving, and equipment and resources previously identified for update replacement as part of our long-range capital planning, our 20-year capital plan. We recognize that in addition to the goals of this revitalization of the first and lower levels, there are building elements that are wearing and in need of some update, and there's an economy of scale and opportunity cost for including some of these necessary planned improvements while we have skilled trades and a construction manager already engaged in this project. From this range of topics and goals, we will eventually be presented with a menu of options for us to consider. We will most certainly not be able to immediately afford and accomplish all of the options that are presented as part of the project, but we'll have a better picture of what our needs and aspirations are and can develop a priority list and plan for addressing the remaining details over time. Are there any questions about the project where we are today or any of the initiatives or steps that we've taken to this point?
Have there been any surprises or any unforeseen issues so far, or is it pretty much as we anticipated?
So I don't know that I can really comment on like specific surprises. As you know, we have a building with a lot of idiosyncrasies. There are maybe some aspirations that we have for the building that just may not be physically possible. We're dealing with multiple constructions over a series of 100 years on this property. Therefore, some buildings are abutting with each other. There are some walls that are absolutely necessary and support walls. We would love to open up spaces and try to unify a number of resources, but that just may not be physically possible within the structural needs of the library. That's one of the things that I think is not necessarily surprising, but confounding, because it will limit what our possibilities are. But we'll try to flip that around and see how that might be an advantage. We'll try to work that to our benefit. Beyond that, there are a lot of innovative ideas that are coming from our staff. You all have shared a lot of ideas as well, and we're excited to compile all that information in Joe's report and be able to share more concrete data about that once we're a little bit further down the road and start preparing for our engagement with the public.
And engagement with the public, any timeline on that at this time?
I think it's kind of contingent upon the next steps in Joe's process, once he's integrated all the feedback from the staff. I'm anticipating this summer
Okay.
for that engagement. So what he really wants to be able to do is identify what are some of those long-range 20-year capital improvement plans that coincide with the timing of the project that we're working on here. There may be some larger scale things while we've got, as I said, the skilled trades engaged that we may want to take advantage of. It may make sense to replace, say, for example, there's a few doors on the exterior that need to be replaced. If we're moving entrances or making some changes to the perimeter of the building, we may endeavor to do those. If an elevator is down for a period of time, it may make sense to replace the cars. That's one of the things that's been our long-range plan, is to update the elevator infrastructure. The generator is due for replacement. This may be a great opportunity with a lot of electrical work going on for us to take advantage of bringing additional resources onto the generator and planning that out, so some engineering with that. I think analyzing that scale is going to be a key element of this, but I think we're still continuing to gather feedback from the staff. We'll then be able to present that menu of options, and that will help the public to better understand what our aspirations are, both as board and staff, as well as then collecting the feedback from the public about what's going to be most of value to them. But we already know that our aspirations and reach far exceed what we've already budgeted for this project. So more to come.
Well, more to come. Good, thank you. I was just going to say, the other thing that I think has been so instrumental is to go see what other libraries have done. And I think the board just had, the architectural firm had just finished recently Lombard's library. So I did a little field trip out to Lombard, it's far. But interesting, you know, and I still see things that I could think we might want to do differently. We have to do differently, as you say. And our footprint is a defined footprint. Oftentimes, it seems like they can expand because they have a lot more land. So not only is an older building, I understand, but our footprint has constraints. It's fun to go see different libraries, though.
Sure is.
All right. And next is our report from our May 3rd, 2024 Finance Committee meeting. Tracy? Yes,
Way
thank
to go.
you.
I'll start. Mary Ann and myself and Joan and Director Austin all met. I first want to thank the Director Austin and the staff for all their work in preparing the draft budget. It's not an easy task, and I really appreciate the work that they've done thus far. In this packet, you'll note that we've included the analysis from Andrew Kim from our October 2023 board meeting. In it, if you'll look at it, it assumes a deficit for the current year of $537,000. But if you look at the notes in the draft budget, it's expected the number will be closer to about $370,000. Furthermore, the analysis assumes a deficit of $275,000 for the next year's 2025, which is about $100,000 less than what's currently in the proposed budget. So using the Andrew Kim scenario, with the deficit spending for this year, the general fund would be at about 50% in 2029, just 5 years from now, and depleted in 2033-34. Now, keeping in mind this does assume a current year deficit, which is going to be about $167,000 less than what we originally budgeted, so it's a little off. However, even with those, I would estimate that with the proposed budget and in looking at similar increases in the future years, we could be run out faster. If you look under page 5 under personnel, it should be noted that the staff have already been approved a 4% cost of living adjustment, which was implemented in April and May of 2024. So then we also in that meeting discussed whether we as a board take a view as a global view. Do we look at it as a total? Would people like to go over individual line items? We in that meeting did not go over individual line items. We just had a really vibrant discussion about the two different philosophies. Now I'll let Director Austin go.
All right, so one point I want to make, I think I want to clarify a detail that you just stated in your report about a 4% increase. Only until the budget is approved will there be the go-ahead to make an increase for staff. I'm recommending in this proposed budget a 4% increase for staff, but only until the board takes action will such a thing take effect. That is commensurate with the cost of living increases that our peer libraries have made, and we're going to have a more in-depth conversation
Yes.
about personnel at our Wednesday, May 29th Finance Committee meeting at 10 a.m., and we'll go into a lot more detail about that.
You know what, that's my error, because I actually read that and I thought it was done, so my apologies on that.
We do not assume such things until they're approved. All of that said, there is a narrative that provides a broad look at what the operations of the library are. From a big picture standpoint, I will say that following our first committee meeting on May 3rd, I was told to sharpen my pencil, and I did. I came back with a little bit less of a proposal than what we had at the May 3rd meeting. Effectively, what I've done is I've walked out any increases in the operations of the library beyond personnel. So you'll see that there is a cost-neutral year-to-year analysis from fiscal year 23-24 to 24-25 in the two categories of patron materials and services and library operations. The only increases that I'm proposing for fiscal year 24-25 are the cost of living increases and the additional staff in the personnel section. That is what comprises the increases in the budget. There are a lot of other details that are embedded in those other two categories, and I'm happy to go into any of those with you this evening. Do you all have any questions about the proposals?
So we'll go over particularly the personnel line item. That's one that we really won't talk about tonight because that is something we'll do in the finance. And as you said, if everything else is flat, that would be more of the discussion would be in the closed session next week.
Right.
So keeping that in mind.
I guess I'll add one more detail here at the outset. So the last thing that we were just talking about on the agenda before the budget proposal was our space needs assessment. There's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes right now with staff imagining what the future of this space is going to look like. There will be multiple impacts that will happen as a result of a potential renovation project. Service desks will be reanalyzed. Services will be reviewed. Whole collections are going to be relocated, promoted, developed. Some collections will need to be reduced in size. You will note that for the first time in a number of years, we have done a more significant decrease in the proposed budget for materials this year. A lot of that is operational, primarily to the fact that our continuations budget, which has been bundled with our physical materials, that's primarily been used by reference resources that have an annual or irregular renewal process, have migrated to a digital format, so we're not purchasing those types of encyclopedias in physical format. An encyclopedia set that was part of that line was our Youth Services World Book Encyclopedia, which we are no longer purchasing in print format. It's an end of an era, so that is not included in there, that $1,000, but philosophically, there are a number of those resources that have trended away from being a single user, single copy purchase that goes into a reference collection that can only be used physically at the library to more subscription bases, which is why our electronic resources line continues to be at $500,000 because there are so many resources that we rely on that are digital these days. But we are also looking at reductions in the audiovisual line, particularly in light of the fact that we're seeing a number of publishers are moving away from producing CD audiobooks, for example, and that digital media in general and culture is seeing a long decline. We're not eliminating those collections by any stretch, but some publishers are no longer producing those items, and therefore we're looking at other avenues to provide those titles. We did reduce the rest of the print budget by about 5% this year. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in reviewing the collections. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily producing fewer items for the public to choose from. We're looking at improving the collections. So we're not proposing that we reduce the collection significantly from a purchasing standpoint, but we do need to start making some cuts here and there, and that was one place where we felt comfortable this year that we might be able to make a little bit of reduction. It's a bit of a shell game on the operations side because costs continue to go up for a number of resources. and services, and we do have a commitment to a project that we began last year with our digitization of our local history collection, which continues in our electronic resources line 74100. But those are some of the key projects that we're working on. Also, in light of the fact that we're working on a renovation project potentially in the next year, the building improvement line, we've reduced a little bit more than usual this year, anticipating that we're going to be doing a number of those improvements as part of that construction project. But that's kind of the general theme. I will say that we anticipate that health insurance will continue to go up. That's part of the personnel line. Just the insurance industry in general, we're seeing increases across the board there. Our contractual agreements are following that same trending of 4 to 5%. So that's kind of the cost of living that we're seeing that's added into those. The rest of a lot of our services continue on as they have been in years past. As I mentioned at our last meeting, the Friends have approved an increase in support of our programming, so we've got $32,000 set aside from them. Our programming budget remains the same as this current fiscal year. That's kind of, in a nutshell, where we're at from a narrative standpoint. Do you all have any questions about any of the details?
I just have one question, which I apologize for not asking you in advance. You know, on equipment, computer and maintenance, 74,150, we increased that one by 15,000. And it indicates that you're pulling from a couple other items, which makes sense. But those two items didn't go down. One went up 10,000 and the other one stayed flat. Can you kind of help me out with that?
Yeah, so part of that is what I was saying earlier, is that a lot of the print resources are migrating to digital, so we're providing additional digital resources there. We've also subscribed to some new products. So part of the reason why 74,150 has gone up, that's our computer contracts.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest piece of that, approximately 95,000 of that, goes to Computer View. They're our contracted local area network maintenance contractor. We've been with them for over 20-some years. They manage our network. They're our key partner in ensuring the success of our technology. So that's a big part of it. There are a number of other things that they provide. As you mentioned this evening, one of the checks we paid out was for our antivirus. We include that in that line item. So not only is their contract in there, but some of the services that they render for us are included in that. We made a number of improvements with our tech infrastructure in the past year, particularly in the way that we provide service through our public computing. We've got a partnership with a business called Today's Business Solutions, TBS. They provide access to our patron computers. It's the time management system, the print release software. Those expenses were previously debited from a different line as the electronic service providers line, but that really is a service that we feel is more essential to the infrastructure of the library, so it was more of a semantic thing. We wanted to make sure that that was included over there.
But you also increased electronic service providers by 10,000.
That's right. So as you've noted, and as I'll get to in my report here, fiscal year 23-24 has been one of our strongest years for digital usage. We've seen exponential growth in Overdrive circulation. Our historical high for Overdrive was this year. This month, April, was our second highest month with Overdrive, just off by a couple hundred points. So that was a pretty big deal for us. Hoopla posted its largest increase ever this year. And Hoopla is an interesting product in that we pay per use, as we do with Canopy. So those two digital resources are where we're seeing the shift away from physical media. How many of you still use DVDs at home? Okay, we got a couple people occasionally. DVDs are still very much popular at the library. There are a lot of things that you can't necessarily get from your streaming services. That said, there are a number of producers that don't make a physical copy of their item. A lot of those items will come in and out of the subscription platforms. You may have something on your watch list and you go back to look at it and suddenly it's no longer there. Well, the library might have a physical copy of that item, but those two streaming platforms may also have it. So Hoopla and Canopy are one of those platforms that provide access to movies as well as audiobooks. And that's where we're seeing a lot of that physical content is now moving into that platform. But as I've said before, we have to pay per circ on those. And as the circulation goes up, we have to pay more. So we're estimating that we're going to have a higher demand in those as we go forward because we're just seeing that trending right now. So that partly explains where
Yep.
that's coming from.
That's very helpful. Yeah, and then I just, that one item, which you can get back to me on, there was one item you indicated had gone down, which was still flat. It's
Right.
little, it's not a big deal. And then, anybody else, I mean, does anybody have any questions? I mean, the one thing that I looked at was and I just think as you're looking at these, before we meet next week as the Finance Committee, looking at Andrew Kim's projection, kind of looking at where we are now, you know, this year will be a better year than what he has in his projection. Next year with this proposed budget will be significantly higher deficit spending, kind of balance each other out, but looking long-term as to how are we going to, as a board, look ahead and think about this budget and how it affects looking forward.
I really think that's the right approach, to just.
We have to think about it.
For years into the future.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sounds.
Well, I think it does take a fine-tooth comb to go through the kinds of things, and I think your narratives are very helpful, and then tonight, the explanation. I think our patrons are demanding and high-impact readers, and that's where I think all the hoopla, canopy, the viewers, that's what's expected. And a little bit of a rock and a hard place, but we'll continue to talk this through.
Yeah, does anybody have any comments, questions, thoughts on anything?
I think it's just balancing expectations and how we want to have growth with finite resources. And I think this board is very cognizant of that and also is looking forward. And we did have excellent discussion in the Finance Committee meeting.
Right, well, will everyone be there next week? Who will be able to attend next week? Or
I can attend.
Bye, Brenda, too? Do you have to work? It's really important that you have gone through things and looked through it and come with opinions and really have ideas as to you're comfortable, you know, how comfortable you are. And we'll, I think, going through the personnel.
Could you speak into the
Oh,
mic?
sorry.
Excuse me.
You've spent time really looking at it, being comfortable with what's presented as questions, and then we'll spend more time in personnel, which is the largest line item.
And if you can't, any trustees cannot attend, please
Yeah,
talk
reach
with
out.
us, call any of us,
Yeah,
or
call
submit
Anthony.
anything, in a few notes, whatever. But because as a board, we're all in this together.
Yep.
So, appreciate it.
And then from a timeline perspective, is June, the June meeting is then we will vote, correct?
So it's been a little bit interesting compiling these draft budgets this year because of the timing of our committee meetings. So when we met in early May, we had not completed our April financials at that point, so we were operating on just the first 3 quarters to kind of give us a projection. Since we're going to be meeting on May 29th, we're not going to have the May end financials for projections, so I'm kind of using the crystal ball to try to figure out where we're going to be at. But I think we've got a pretty reasonable estimate of where we're going to be ending at this point. If we decide, following the May 29th meeting, that there's some additional work that we need to do or that we need to hold an additional committee meeting for further exploration based upon what we find at the end of May, and you would like to see the May financials before we get to the June 18th meeting, we may be able to schedule another committee meeting to have that discussion. Or I may be able to just provide you with some additional information electronically at that point, and then we'd be able to have a bit more of a discussion on June 18th. But that traditionally has been when we've made the approval for the forthcoming fiscal year's budget is at the June meeting.
All right, okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Oh, good. We'll now move on to the director's report, please. You wanna
Okay,
take a
thank
swig
you.
before you...
All right.
Thank you.
So I'll give you a brief narrative overview of my report, and then if you've got any individual questions about that, we can take it from there. So I'll start with a little bit of statistics. As I mentioned a moment ago, physical circulation continued its recent pattern here in April, making a strong showing on par with our monthly average for this fiscal year, with about 55,000 items circulated. Our digital circulation continues its exponential growth trend with another new record high for ebook checkouts this month, as well as a fiscal year high for Hoopla. Our digital circulation is currently accounting for approximately 30% of our total circulation, which is really ahead of where we're looking at comparatively for other public libraries in the nation. But we knew that. We know that our patrons are really into digital items. Our door counts continue their remarkable trend overall. We continue to serve about 700 users each day, and we welcomed 132 new patrons in April. In terms of collections, adult technical services and shelving continue to evaluate, weed, shift, and generally improve the appearance and findability of resources on the lower level and in the media room and across the first floor. We have some shifts and relocations that are being planned in the coming weeks, and we're excited for the possibility afforded by those. I'll have more to share with you at our next meeting about the action on those items. We added some new items to our Popular Library of Things collection here in April, including an Xbox X console, a PlayStation 5 console, Jenga Giant, 3 Rokus with BritBox subscriptions, as well as an additional Oculus VR headset and an additional Nintendo Switch Lite to fulfill patron demand. Couple updates I want to share across the rest of the departments. You may recall back during the pandemic years, we partnered with the Historical Museum on a project called Voices of Wilmette, which was our oral history project, where we invited our community to conduct interviews and record those interviews. We have compiled and ingested all of those interviews onto our website as part of our local history collection, and there's a link in our report where you can take a look at those items. It's really fascinating to see all of that content there. There are over 53 interviews that have been compiled and presented there that capture the history of our community from those who lived it. And one of those just so happens to be our former board president, Lisa McDonald. So I'm actually excited to hear what some of these sound like, so check it out. Our teen services librarian, Krista Hutley, facilitated the donation of over 600 books from her work on the ALA Best Fiction for Young Adults committee, and it made those donations to community nonprofits and Chicago Public Schools. She's worked with partner organization the Warming House and their representative Grace McManus, and 5 teens who actively served on the leadership board to sort through and package those books. Recipients include Mather School, North Chicago Community Partners via Radical Generosity Chicago, and the African Library Project via a Nutria High School Student Book Drive Initiative. So thank you, Krista, for all of your work in coordinating with those folks. A big subject of our last meeting on April 16th were our Between the Lines programs that we had planned for April 26th and May 18th, which were a resounding success. On April 26th, Sarah Jo Zaharako and Andrea Von Johnson hosted Between the Lines, a kids' book about pronouns author visit. Dr. Courtney Wells and Lee Wells joined us for a reading and conversation about identity and allyship. The event was organized in partnership with the Mackenzie PTA. Overwhelming community support and interest resulted in robust attendance, engaging discussion, and joyful community building. The Record North Shore covered the event. Audience members had a chance to talk with the authors after the program, as well as meet representatives from PFLAG who provided local LGBTQ+ resources and information. The entire youth services team and staff from across the library contributed to the success of the program, and we wanted to make sure that we gave you all their support as well for supporting our initiatives. Thank you so much for helping us to walk the talk with our mission and vision. We had a couple big conferences that took place in the past month. HR Manager Mike Boone attended the Regional 2024 HR All Together Conference. Communications and Events Manager Sarah Beth Brown and Digital and Maker Services Manager Lauren Kelly attended the Public Library Association Annual Conference in Columbus, Ohio, and youth and teen staff attended the Chicago Comics and Entertainment Expo. We did some community engagement this month as well to advance our strategic goals regarding sustainability and advocacy. Librarian Katie Jacob has been serving in a new role as library liaison with community organization Go Green Wilmette. One of the first collaboration events that we had was an April 18th Repair Cafe that was held across the street at St. John's, in which residents were offered assistance in restoring items to use rather than discarding them for new. Katie welcomed visitors with library resources and related information, and we're looking forward to additional partnerships in the coming month. Another partnership that we had was with our Village Sustainability Coordinator and the Forestry Division. We partnered with them to install 5 new native trees around the grounds of the library on our block, including on the border of the village parking lot as well as by the post office. And a contentious tree that was over by the bus shelter was removed and replaced. We were excited about that. It was the subject of much discussion a couple years ago.
It was a pear tree,
The
wasn't
Bradford
it?
pear. So we're trying to get all natives on our grounds, including on the easement, and the village has helped us with that. So we're excited about that. And on that same day, Arbor Day, April 26th, we had a free tree seedling event in our vestibule. It was a very rainy day, but we gave away over 100 trees. It was a remarkable success, so we're really excited about that. That's a brief overview of what was contained in my report. Are there any questions about anything else that you found there or anything else going on around the library?
I have a couple comments. Marcus, the landscaping looks fabulous. The yard, it just looks really good outside. I was here today, so you guys are doing a great job. Kathleen, I want to tell you, I appreciate all the work you're doing, going through, reviewing the online resources and checking the cost-benefit ratio. I know something was taken out, so I think your name was mentioned. And I was surprised at the number of high percentage of non-Wilmette card holders for the lockers. It's pretty high. So it's providing a service, but not necessarily my last thing is the Friends continue to put together bags of books for the Adjust Harvest. I haven't been there in a while, but we were really short on kids' books, so they gave me 2 big bags of kids' books, which is really appreciated. So thank you to the Friends.
And they just had a pop-up this past Saturday.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to attend. Did anyone swing by the library
I don't know.
yesterday? I don't know. But much appreciated that they're working hard for us. I did attend the Repair Cafe, and it was really, there were lots of people there, and we had our table there, and a great idea, really a great program. And I know that, Renee, may I call on you, that you were able to attend the April 26th
Yeah.
pronoun program?
Just as you said, it was extremely well attended, lots of families with kids. The authors, I thought, were very forthcoming with how the book came to be and were really engaging, and people stuck around and interacted with the authors afterwards. So overall, just another great event.
Thank you. And I attended the May 18th last Friday, and same thing. A little smaller, but a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of interest, and parents were asking great questions at the end, and they had a small bookstore owner that was there to talk about how they include books of a variety of titles. It was really a great program, so thank you, Andrea. It was good. Very good. Any other questions for Director Austin? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, any committee reports this evening? Trustee Mueller? Okay.
I've got a couple details I can share from ILA and Rails. Just briefly, both ILA and Rails are in their election season right now with their new executive board members. I vote on behalf of Wilmette Library as part of that, so it's a participative process, so I just wanted you to know that we do participate. We review all of the candidates and vote accordingly. The Illinois Library Association, which oversees the standards for public libraries in the state. We've gone through this process a number of times. They produce a publication called Serving Our Public, the Standards for Illinois Public Libraries. They've appointed a committee to review, update, and design a new online version of that manual, the last of which was updated right before the pandemic in 2020. So there's going to be a new edition that will be coming out in 2025. Compliance with those standards is a contingency of the receipt of our per capita grant on an annual basis. So we'll keep you posted on updates to that handbook. And then the last thing I wanted to share is Rails is working on a new digital accessibility page for public libraries. Accessibility is a big initiative for the library. It's part of our standards. And we have been making concerted efforts in the past couple months to go through and make sure that our website is in compliance with those accessibility standards so that we're able to serve users of all abilities. But we're really grateful that Rails is also helping to prepare all of our peer libraries as well as us in moving that forward. So we'll share more information about the steps that we're taking with that, and that will be one of our initiatives for this coming fiscal year as part of our strategic goals.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay.
We've got the purple folder circulating there with the comment box and correspondence.
ALA coming up. Okay, June 27th to July 2nd in San Diego. Do we have staff attending?
I will be attending. We've got 2 representatives from Youth Services and 1 representative from Adult Services. So good representation in San Diego.
Excellent. Sounds great. Thank you. Any new business? Seeing none. We will have, is now 7:16. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this meeting at 7:16.
Very good. And that would be a voice vote, please. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Thank you. And now the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
everybody.
you.